can do. We're at the mercy of the computer.
I got some magic happening. We're bouncing off Russian and French satellites. It may have a faint signal.
How exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is, he doesn't have an answer.
Now that's a cock and bull story if I ever heard one.
How hard it is to admit the truth. Take him to the little room.
Remember he said you can't have manufacturing jobs in this country? You need a magic wand. Remember the famous? Well, I guess we found the magic wand.
If you watch Fox News, you are living on a different planet.
What is your major malfunction, numbnut?
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Quiet, numbskull. I'm broadcasting.
And there you go, brother.
You're back. You're back.
You like that one, do you?
That's the James that I came to know and love 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, that was a good one. I have to admit, that one kind of just like the other good ones, it kind of just fit right into place.
Yeah, that's it.
It made itself.
That's what you only you can do that. That's a new art form. I'm telling you, it's your art form. Like Picasso, like I created a new art form. This is yours.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, brother. I do appreciate that. We needed a new one. We needed to have a new one because of the stuff going on with the copyright stuff on Facebook and the other
censorship.
The censorship. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just want to start off by saying, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you hear so far, and if you like what you hear later, like and subscribe to the channel. Also, share this information with your friends. The stuff we talk about is the means, the method, the model for you to use to talk to your neighbor, talk to your friends, talk to the people in your community to help take back our country, our lovely country, and all the good that it can do and all the good that it has done. Today, for example, my brother's got some mic issues over on that end. I think.
Sorry.
But my name is Jim, and that guy over there is my brother.
Namaste.
And we are the Brotherhood of Liberty. Today
Holy Spirit, namaste.
Today is day 57 of the Afghanistan hostage crisis that you do not hear about on the lame strain, steam, or whatever we call it, the media that doesn't work, do its job, that doesn't look out for us and doesn't care for us. So we have on our show tonight, we're going to start off unusual. Today we're going to start off with the story of Merrick Garland and the American First Legal Foundation. And we're going to talk about that, the stuff going on with the school boards and the way you have become a domestic terrorist in the eyes of the Justice Department. Then we're going to go on to Christopher Columbus statue in Philly. And then I will come back and do the updates. And then lastly, we will do Pugnando Part 6, and this has got to do with the Good Samaritan story, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, brother, let's start off with the first letter that the Attorney General Merrick Garland wrote, and as we remember from October 4th, the backstory of this is Merrick Garland posted this letter out there saying that the U.S. federal government was going to use its resources to track down and protect all the school officials, school board members, and such from the evil domestic terrorists known as the parents who are standing up for their children and standing up for their children's rights. Because the week prior, 5 days before this letter, the Biden administration received a letter from the School Boards Association detailing the 14 separate issues on, as examples of the 1,400 school boards out there that were having problems. So there's 1,400 school boards, and they showed you 14, and that is the basis of the action that the federal government is taking. So, what is that action, and where is it coming from? So we're going to move on to the next. This letter here, which is from the America First Legal Foundation. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Hat tip to Mark Levin, who I heard this on his show Thursday night, And, we give credit where credit is due. Obviously, he didn't write this. This is from the American First Legal Foundation, and they were very good to put this on the internet. But I just want you to hear some of the things. They break it down, some of the things we just talked about, and also about, I just want to highlight the Supreme Court has repeatedly recognized American parents' fundamental liberty, interest in the Constitution right to control and direct education of their own children. That is a key thing. We're going to jump down here to key Biden administration stakeholders, including National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, and others have combined to oppress, threaten, and intimidate parents to chill and prevent them from exercising the rights or privileges secured by the Constitution. To date, these efforts, though extensive, had generally proven ineffectual. And let me, make this bigger so people can see it from their screens. There we go. I want to lay out before I go any further that this letter is very interesting in the fact that it comes across as almost like a legal argument. It makes several key points that we'll dive into before we're done with it. But I just want you to look at this through a legal lens, or what you may consider a legal lens, because they certainly and clearly are looking at this through a legal lens. In early September, the Biden administration stakeholders held discussions regarding avenues for potential federal action against parents with a key Biden Domestic Policy Council official, known as Jane Doe 1, and White House staff, John Doe number 1. Stakeholders also held discussion with senior department officials, including at least one political appointee in the department's Civil Rights Division, Jane Doe number 2. So Jane Doe number 1, John Doe number 1, and others in the White House separately expressed concern regarding the potential partisan political impact of parent mobilization and organization around school issues in the upcoming midterm elections. That last sentence, I think, is key, that these two members of the White House separately expressed concern regarding the potential partisan political impact of parent mobilization and organization around school issues in the upcoming midterm elections. That's a key point. Upon information, the belief at the express direction of or with the express consent of Jane Doe number 1, Jane Doe number 2, and other Biden administration officials developed a plan to use a letter from an outside group, in parentheses, not the usual suspects, as pretext for federal action to chill, deter, and discourage parents from exercising their constitutional rights and privileges. I just want to reference you back to the previous line, if you'll...
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 48. The motion to...
That's what you call technology issues. They have an automatic refresh on that page so they can boost up their numbers. So I just want to recap right there what I was just interrupted. This line, this pretext to chill, deter, and discourage parents, goes back to this sentence here. White House separately expressed concerns regarding the potential partisan political impact of parent mobilization. Of course, they're talking about, John, the 2022 congressional election, about how it's going to cause the Democratic Party to tank and lose because of what's going on with this parental, quote unquote, mobilization, right? So that's like the connection between the two. I want to pull up over here on or about September 29th, as we know, citing legal authorities, including the Patriot Act, the National School Boards Association, that not the usual suspect, made a public letter demanding federal action against parents, citing authorities, including the Patriot Act. Just as a refresher for all of those of you out there who are unaware, but the local school boards issues, the local schools issues, are meant to be handled not by the federal government, but by the local government, and in some rare circumstances, the state government. That is the purpose of the local law enforcement. It is not the job of the federal government to be doing that. It's again connected to the local precinct, the local jurisdiction. I want to also dive in here. On October 4th, the Attorney General's memorandum was made public. The short time frame between September 29th and the Attorney General's memorandum suggests that either the entire matter was pre-coordinated and the September 29th was pretext, or that the normal clearance process and standard order, both within the department and between the department and the White House counsel's office and Office of Budget Management, were bypassed or corrupted. So it's either, there's either corruption in the system, or there's they fast tracked this and completely ignored the safeguards in place that would normally be there to keep the federal government from abusing its power, which this is clearly an abuse of power. I'm not going to read any more because it just goes on to summarize. It does point out, which wasn't talked about, in other places, but down here at the very bottom, one of the ninth one right here, the ninth reference, which is therefore we thank you in advance for your attention to this important matter. 9, go down here, read with me. AFL is aware of allegations suggesting the Attorney General is related by the marriage of his daughter to a person who is compensated by public schools to conduct gender identity surveys and data analysis. See the connected information. So again, that's what we talked about before, brother, about Merrick Garland has a personal stake. So let's talk about the legal implications in the next 5 minutes. So the legal implications, brother, you're the legal scholar here.
Okay, so for example, I'll use this example. Say you had a district attorney of the county, and the district attorney of the county decided he was going to punish his rivals politically. So Sussex County, Delaware County, there's a DA, and he starts having his DAs find reasons to prosecute the opposite party, whether it's Republican or Democrat. What would you call that? You would call that nothing more than criminal. That's what it is. You can't use the organs of the state to punish your adversaries politically, and that's exactly what they're doing. They don't want the rise of another Tea Party. Not that we weren't sold out. The Tea Party wasn't sold out by the Rhinos when they got in. Good old Paul Ryan scumbag who should rot in hell because he's a billionaire because he married his wife and the companies and Santorum and all the rest of them. But they can't stand the idea that the people rose up in the Tea Party and even in the Occupy Wall Street movement. They don't want that. So what they're going to do is they're going to use the federal government and its position to the federal government to.
I lost you there, brother.
To go. This should be law and put in jail. This would be a use of the district, the DOJ against political opponents. I mean, what else? Obama got away with it with that little coward, and Fast and Furious, Holder. Good old Eric Holder when he used Fast and Furious to go against them, and Lois Lerner to use when they politicized the IRS and used the IRS to go against the Tea Party. It's at some point and of course they're using it. Nancy Pelosi's using it to go against the people who protested on Capitol. In Capitol on January 6th. At what point do we say enough is enough? And the Republicans who are who are allegedly representing us, are they going to go, you know what, enough of this? We're going to impeach you creeps for doing this. You can't do it. I don't care what size you are. If you're for fair government and you're not some kind of woke-tard religious type of zealot, which is what the other side is full of, then you have to understand whether you're in or out, the government cannot be used against you to quell your speech. There's not been one incident of any of these parents as they gather together to object to their tax money being spent to teach a bunch of nonsense and stupidity. Not one incident of violence. All this is the use is the further degrading of American democracy by the use of the DOJ to go against parents. And this should be the breaking. If there's anything that's going to break the camel's back, this should be it. When these parents who are getting, who move to like the good areas, the rich areas, so they can put their kids to a good public school, then are criminalized, fake criminalized by this fake DOJ, a clown, and then facing being locked up for what? Speaking their mind at a parents, as a parents on a school board meeting. Yeah, all right. That's why he has to go to jail. And if they don't put him to jail, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So you might as well do it now. Pull the scab off the band, pull the Band-Aid off the scab. And start prosecuting this clown for what he is, a clown. He's not only is he a clown, but he's a corrupt clown because he's doing it for money, just to get on the bandwagon like good old Nancy Pelosi and all. The thing is, when Pelosi and the Senate, when they misuse the government for money, they're allowed to do it because they wrote in those exceptions. They shouldn't have them, but they wrote them in. Good old the DOJ doesn't have those exemptions. That's the executive branch. They don't have exemptions to do corrupt acts like that. So that's one more thing he needs to be locked up for. But at what point is the so-called Republicans going to start standing up and going, you know what? Enough's enough. This guy needs to go to jail. We need to have hearings. At least start the ball rolling so he can be removed from office so that he can then be prosecuted criminally. And that's what
but
to say about that.
It's not just that they are using the power to lock people up. They're using the power to destroy. They want to use this power to destroy people's lives. Like they want to dive in. They want to use the full power of the Patriot Act to go after them, to dive into, give you a colostomy, right? Right all the way up. You're a digital colostomy. And
you mean a colonoscopy?
Sorry, a digital colonoscopy, and find out everything that you've ever done wrong, anything that you've ever messed up on, and they want to punish you with that as well. This isn't just going after you for what you're doing in front of the school boards. It's the dehumanizing, the turning you into a terrorist, and putting the entire force of the federal government against you. How do we combat that? How do we deal with that? Any ideas? Did I lose you? Brother? Hello?
I'm back yet.
Yeah. There you go.
With criminal prosecutions. That's what the criminal code is for. It's to lock up when you misuse your government position. Like I said, if you had a county prosecutor, if you had a county district attorney, the guy in Philadelphia, if he starts locking up, he's a Democrat, he's paid by George Soros. If he starts locking up the few Republicans that they are, or more likely, he starts locking up his Democratic rivals, obviously we would go, wow, that's corrupt. He's got to stop that. We need to lock him up. Well, what's the difference between the FBI has even less, the FBI and the DOJ have even less right to say anything about a school board. They have no right to say anything about a school board. Unless you can prove some kind of racism, you have zero authority to do this. So again, no proof. There's been zero incidents other than members getting yelled at by the constituency, rightly so, by the parents who were ticked off by this nonsense. But are you ready for the next segment?
Next is yours, brother.
All right, so we just had the Columbus Day parade today and Sunday. Unfortunately, there was a back and forth about whether the Columbus statue in Philadelphia, home of a lot of Italians, home of Italia's second greatest son, Rocky Balboa, and having the greatest son, Italian son of Italia, Christopher Columbus, Christopher as we will refer to him, has a statue, and it's now boarded up and hidden because we have a racist punk mayor, Mayor Kenny, the Democrat who was too much of a coward to actually debate his Republican opponent last time. So anyway, the Court of Common Pleas said that you can pull down the porch and have it for the parade, and the knuckleheads in the Commonwealth said, "Oh no, it's public safety." Now, how does public safety be impinged when you have a bunch of Italians standing around there? Yeah, nobody's. It's a festival. They're waving Italian flags. Well, why don't they have this right? Well, because the lies spread by idiots like Kenny, and his statement was, Christopher Columbus was a great explorer, blah blah blah. But he was also infamous for us. Then he goes on to a slander about enslaving the indigenous population and imposing punishment, including severing of limbs. Not saying at all about what actually happened. So I mean, I actually have a mind of like suing the punk. But there's Attorney George Bocchetto who's trying to get the statute unveiled. Unfortunately, it was not unveiled. They just had the parade. Although tomorrow is Christopher Columbus Day, and it'll always be. And it gives us a chance. It's just an excuse for me to talk about Christopher Columbus, because that's what I was going to do anyway. Now I can do this and talk also about Pugnando. I get somehow that's the slander that he had he was enslaving people and had severe punishment by cutting off their limbs. Now that's not clear. That's not saying the story at all. Now, of course, this comes from that moron, communist spy and woman molester, Howard Zinn, and his fake history. Now, I mean, he isn't even a good. He's completely incompetent as a historian. Well, he's not a historian. It's a disgrace to call him. It's a disgrace to the name of historians to call him a historian. He was just a communist, a paid agent. We know that now. He's also, of course, a molester of young co-eds, and that's why he was such a inveterate atheist, proving against the principle that we always say: the bigger the pervert, the bigger the atheist, the bigger the pervert. And he was another example of that. At least Hofstadter and the great progressive historians, although we have issues about the fact that covers up the things they covered up in history. Number one being that the Democratic Party was the enslavers, but at least they had talent as historians. This guy had no talent, and of course he takes Columbus's speech and mangles it, leaving out all the important parts about how Columbus, when he finds the new world, makes a great speech about how these Indians are going to be great servants. He cuts it at there, saying, "Oh, he was trying to enslave everybody," a lie and a slander, and then not bringing out the point that the rest of what he said, servants of Jesus Christ, because of course, Columbus was all about Jesus Christ and spreading the gospel. He even called himself the Christ bearer, meaning he was bringing Christianity to the New World. But his ultimate goal always was to get the whole because remember, this is 1492 when he sailed the ocean blue. Comes after 1456, the fall of Constantinople and the Moors, but well before the Battle of Lepantano and the Ottoman Empire have closed off the Holy Lands. And have closed it off to the Christian West. So his whole goal was to find another way around that, to find money to raise a Crusader army to relieve the Christian of the Holy Lands. That was his goal. Anyway, we have, though, fortunately, the original sources, including from his son, Fernando, not the Indian son that he adopted, but his second son, Fernando, who's a super genius. We know Columbus is a super genius, in part because this guy was a super genius. He gave us the great library in Spain, probably the greatest library of his time, but also the fact that, when we put library books, stack them this way instead of, horizontally instead of like this. That was his invention. He was also a great cartologist. But his son wrote the most accurate account, of course, because unlike the Hidalgo, La Casa, the fake priest. I don't know. I mean, he says he was a priest, but he was a slave owner himself, and who also slandered Columbus because he was a rival of Columbus. Didn't know him. Wasn't involved in it. His son Ferdinand.
I lost that joke.
Anyway, back to you missed that part, but back to the back to also have the second account I'm going to read to you about taking the fact that he was enslaving the Indians. Yes, he did enslave a few of the Indians, and the reason why. And I'm going to read to you from the second voyage from the doctor. The doctor points out the doctor Chanka, who went along with them in his firsthand account because he was there. He goes, he's relating some of the women. What would happen is Columbus would show up on an island, and everybody would run away, except for a number of the Indians. The Indians who wouldn't run away were the captives, the captives of the Indians who were at that village. And so these women also say that the Caribbees, the word we get cannibal from, by the way, use them with such cruelty as would scarcely be believed, and that they eat the children which they bear to them, and only bring up those which they have by their natural wives. Such of their male enemies as they can take alive, they bring to their houses to make a feast of them. And those who are dead, they devour at once. They say that a man's flesh is so good that there is nothing like it in the world. And that this is pretty evident for the bones which we found in their homes were gnawed, everything that could be gnawed, so that nothing remained of them, but from what is the great hardness could not be eaten. In one of the houses, we found the neck of a man undergoing the process of cooking. So one of the times that Columbus showed up, they found a neck of a human being cooking there. And then it goes on talking about how they would dismember the prisoners, the boys, and make of them, they would castrate them to grow up to manhood. When they would wish to make a feast, they kill and eat them, for they say that the flesh of boys and women is not good to eat. 3 of these boys came fleeing to us, mutilated, meaning castrated, so that they could be fattened up. So, yeah, he did enslave them, because the reason why, of course, is because Columbus is literally probably one of the greatest. You could make the argument he was the greatest man of that year, of the 1,000 years, maybe 2,000 years, because he was such a sweetheart. He was a 3rd-level Franciscan. So he did enslave these Caribbeans. The reason why was because he couldn't leave them on the islands, because they were eating the other Indians, the nice, gentle Indians, which he loved and adored. And so rather than kill them or slaughter them, which is what the Hidalgos, like Cortez, like AOC Cortez, like her forebearers, the white Spanish, the white Spanish, like those creeps. Well, rather than slaughter them all like did, he would enslave them. The idea they would teach them Christianity, and then eventually maybe freedom or whatever. He couldn't work out the problems because he didn't know what to do with these Caribbeans who he caught, who were eating people, other than stop them by enslaving them. That's the only thing he could do. Now the rest of the Indians, he treated with the including his third son Ferdinand. He adopted actually, and then did it. He treated with the most love that he could by trying to teach them Christianity. Now also have his book of prophecy, which is an amazing book. It's one of he kept a bunch of notes that he would eventually was trying to turn into a book and a letter to Ferdinand and Isabella, explain to him his mission. And I got to read some of it to you because it tells who Christopher Columbus is. Now if you listen to the Hidalgos like Columbus, and what a Hidalgo is a rich a lord. And see, they were never, yes, they accusation against him, and they took him back. This Bombello creep, this Hidalgo who showed up on this third voyage, showed up, and they put him in chains, and they took him back for mismanagement of the islands, because when they got there, he was hanging some of the Hidalgos. So why was he doing that? Because he told them, leave the Indians alone, because the Indians, the sweet little Indians that he found there, were all running around naked. And of course, the Hidalgos they were children, and they were having because they were rich lords. They're the Spanish nobility. They were having sex with them and raping them and killing them and murdering them and all. Finally, he after not listening to him enough, he had to kill a few. It would be better for you if you were a millstone was thrown around your neck and you were thrown into a lake than what's going to happen to you in the next world. So he felt he had to act, and he hung a few of these Hidalgos. Well, what else was he going to do? They were never going to listen to him because he was a common man and he was an Italian, right? They were never going to follow him. These and today, AOC, AO Cortez, just like the Cortez was the ones who the conquistador who killed all the Spanish. It's so perfect because she's exactly the type that you would have, rich, spoiled, thinks she's better than everybody else. She's got a face. We got to start calling her donkey face because she looks like a donkey face. Oh, how can you say, hey, today's gospel was speaking love to the rich young man. Jesus spoke love to him because he loves him. He told him the truth. You gotta, sometimes the truth is hurtful, is painful, right? So I'm saying it with all love to good old AOC, but she's the exact type of Hidalgo, the rich Spanish lord that would never listen. If I could find it. Yeah, real words of who Christopher Columbus was in his goal. All right. First of all, he goes, I believe that the Holy Spirit operates in Christians, Jews, Moors, and in all the others of any religion, not only in the wise, but in the ignorant as well. I met a villager who describes the heavens and the stars and their past better than others who pay to acquire this knowledge. And I say that the Holy Spirit not only reveals the future to rational creatures, but shows us by means of signs in the heavens and the air, and through the beast, through the witches, as was the case during the time of Rome, right? And ways too numerous to note. He listened to everybody, and he took everybody for who they were, because he was the common man. He was literally a common man. Here's the way he starts his letter to Isabel and Ferdinand, which was going to turn into a treatise to argue for another movement to the New World. Most exalted rulers at a very young age, and he's describing his life. I began sailing the seas and have continued until now. This profession creates a curiosity about the secrets of the world. I've been a sailor for 40 years, and I have personally sailed to all the known regions. I have had commerce and conversations with knowledgeable people of the clergy and the laity, Latins and Greeks, Jews and Moors, and with many others of different religions. Our Lord has favored my occupation and has given me an intelligent mind. He has endowed me with a great talent for seamanship, sufficient ability in astrology, geometry, and arithmetic, and the mental and physical dexterity required to draw spherical maps of cities, rivers, and mountains, islands, and ports, and everything in its proper place. During this time, I have studied all kinds of texts, cosmology, histories, chronicles, philosophies, and other disciplines. Through these writings, the hand of our Lord opened my mind to the possibility of sailing to the Indies and gave me the will to attempt the voyage. With this burning ambition, I came to your Highness. Everyone who heard about my enterprise rejected it with laughter and ridicule. Neither all the sciences that I mentioned previously, nor citations drawn from them were of any help to me. Only your Highness had the faith and perseverance. Who could doubt that this was a flash of understanding, was a work of the Holy Spirit as well. And what he's getting point to is his goal. I said I would represent my argument for the restitution of the Holy Temple to his holy church. Perhaps your Highness and all the others who know me and who know this letter may be shown will criticize me publicly or privately as an uneducated man and an uninformed sailor, as an ordinary person. But you know what? That ordinary person did the impossible. I am so sick of these woke tards being lectured who know nothing of actual history, lecturing us about a guy who got himself across the ocean, not once, but 4 times and back, and never met. He was one time he was off 100 miles by backtracking, coming around on the 4th vision, and he still hit Jamaica 100 miles off, right? With no compass, no map, no way to judge the speed of the current, no accurate way to judge the speed of his ship, no way to judge the speed of the air. Just his God-given talents. He grounded once by accident because he fell asleep, and he had to sleep at some time, and once on purpose. a guy who did all this with none of the things. You couldn't do it today. Nobody could do this today with the knowledge of that there is a new world, let alone these fools who can't change a tire. Lecture us about a guy who got himself across the ocean and back 4 times. Are they insane? It just goes to show you how ridiculously foolish they are and why you should never listen to them. Who was Christopher Columbus? I'll tell you who he was. He was the first American, the first true American, the guy who self-taught, common man, Italian, who did the impossible because you and God are a majority. You and God, he's put dreams in your heart. Your job is to follow those dreams. That's who he was. He was the first American. That's why October 12th will always be Columbus Day. All right, brother? How you like that? How you like them apples?
Well done. I would just throw in there that I have it on good authority that Howard Zinn has 0 footnotes or sources in his book.
You just got more actual firsthand history than you'll ever hear from a fake historian.
Yeah, that's pretty much what he is, and he should be discredited as much as possible. So let's dive into the updates. First of all, I have a prediction to make. I talked to my brother about this before. I predict that between now and there's a possibility between now and the midterm elections that there will be a war between Taiwan and China, and that we will most likely be involved. There's a possibility of it between now and the midterm elections. There's more likely of a possibility between the midterm elections and the next presidential election, because as you well know, as you're well aware of, Biden is going to look to see any way to keep the Democrats in power. We've seen that with just the few things that we've covered today about how they're more interested in going after you and calling you and putting the fear of the federal government into you. Of course, they forget that we have the power of God to protect us, so we have a much better chance of winning that argument. God's on our side. But the idea to keep in mind is they're willing to do anything that they can. So it's not that surprising if Biden would try to start a war before the end of before he becomes kicked out of the White House, in order for him to stay in the White House, because there is that belief that Americans don't like to change horses in the middle of a fight, and so we wouldn't be willing to change presidents, and it would be a way for him to build up his popularity as a pretext to having us defend Taiwan. So I do think that that's in the cards. The reason why I think it's a possibility between now and this next congressional election is because of what I'm about to show you. What we have here is Winnie the Pooh, the head of the Chinese government, the head nut job. Here he is.
China's President Xi Jinping vowed on Saturday to realize reunification with Taiwan. Speaking at Beijing's Great Hall of the People, Xi said the Chinese people have a glorious tradition of opposing separatism. Xi's comments follow a week of tensions during which Beijing dispatched about 150 Chinese military flights into Taiwan's air defense zone. While he didn't mention the use of force, Xi's message was clear.
We don't have to hear Winnie the Pooh. We can always watch him on a Sunday morning cartoons. But seriously, he is hell bent to go after Taiwan. And you remember prior when Trump was president, there was none of these threats, none of these attempted overflights of Taiwan. The Chinese government were too busy trying to defend themselves from Trump's power and pushing them around. They were too busy trying to defend from Trump pushing them around. Now, of course, they have a friend and ally and bought employee in the White House, and they can do whatever they want. They can get whatever they want done. So this is no big deal that they are flying over Taiwan, because they know that Biden's not going to do anything about it. He'll threaten, they'll do some military drills. They'll have some, the British and the American fleets went through the Strait, but that's, or through the South China Sea, but that's about all you'll see from the China, or from the federal government. So let's move on to the next thing. I wanted to mention about the partnership among, where is it? The partnership between the Democrats and the Republicans on Capitol Hill. We have about 11 senators who went along with this raising the debt limit. I think this is instructive because, remember, about 2 months ago or a month or so ago, we heard from McConnell, not going to help the Democrats. Not going. This is their ball of wax. This is theirs to their ball of yarn that they have to unravel. It's all on them. And then he caves, and McConnell, of course, the rhino that he is, along with his 10 chosen, they bailed on the American people. That, and it has set this up that, it's funny, John. Politicians, you really do expect to lie to you, but they lie sometimes so good and make it sound so good. He passes it off as, hey, listen, we helped you this time, but we're not going to help you next time. We're not going to be there for you next time. We're not going to be on your side. He says, remarkably, even as Republicans saved Americans from this crisis, Senator Schumer kept compounding his failures. Last night, in a bizarre spectacle, Senator Schumer exploded in a rant that was so partisan, angry, and corrosive that even Democratic senators were visibly embarrassed. So, yes, that's true. But the idea here is, here's McConnell, after everything's done, saying, we helped you. We're so glad we could. And going on and complaining about it. Here, I want to play. I should start with that one. Where is? Oh, it's over here. Let's. No, it's in the Gateway Pundit one. It's one of the Gateway Pundits. Here, nope. Here it is.
Ceiling, but said Democrats must raise it alone.
That's Manchin in the back.
Convoluted.
If you look at Manchin, the guy who's got his head in his hands, I don't know if let me see if I can pop that out. The guy who's got his head in his hands, that's Senator Manchin, who afterwards said, that was fucking stupid. Excuse my French, but that's pretty much what he said. And then there was another senator who said the same thing to him. But, it doesn't matter because he got what he wanted. But listen to Schumer. This is the rant that McConnell references.
Reconciliation process. That was simply unacceptable to my caucus. And yesterday, Senate Republicans finally realized that their obstruction was not going to work. I very much thank my Democratic colleagues for showing our unity in solving this Republican-manufactured crisis. Despite immense opposition from Leader McConnell and members of his conference, our caucus held together, and we pulled our country back from the cliff's edge that Republicans tried to push us over.
I want to.
This is a temporary but necessary and important fix. I appreciate that.
You can see he's mumbling. Manchin's mumbling. He's a little upset.
Without a convoluted and unnecessary reconciliation process that until today, the Republican leader claimed was the only way.
There he goes. Manchin takes off.
Let me say,
Manchin took off there. I wanted to play that also because if you listen to Schumer a little bit closer, maybe it was the clip was too short, but he is clearly making the case to get rid of this debt limit at all, and that's been being made for the last couple of weeks, where the Democrats have been having hearings discussing this. Having the knuckleheads in the Treasury Department come over and say, well, we got to pay these debts, and we need to be able to raise the debt limit pretty much whenever we want, so we can spend as much as we want. So there's no restrictions, nothing stopping us, nothing to pull us back from the brink. We can keep on spending the limitless credit card of the next 3 or 4 generations to pay off this debt. There's absolutely, they don't want any check on them in Congress. They really don't. This is just another example of them trying to grab more power, more control over how the system works. It's disgusting. it's disgusting to hear them talk about like we think that they're responsible enough to have that kind of power. Yet we continue to reelect these knuckleheads and send them down to Congress. It's mind-boggling that we still allow this to happen. But this guy, you got to listen to what these politicians say. Again, you heard McConnell lie that we're not going to help you next time. You know he is. It's just going to be some deal that they make because he said he wasn't going to do it last time. He lied there. He's lying when he writes that letter to Biden. And Schumer is just laying the groundwork to get rid of the debt limit. Meanwhile, John, you and I struggle to pay our bills. Every single one of us out there are struggling just to keep our head above water with the rising cost of living, with the increased gas prices, inflation driving food prices up, the idea that our economy it's still recovering from COVID, and it's still recovering from the massive damage caused by the Democrats and their lockdowns. We're facing an economic crisis that is going to be remarkably worse than 2008, I think. And again, that'll be another reason for us to have a war, because with the war they'll be able to crank down all these free speech codes and be able to put us in our place a lot easier. They won't have time to deal with it. I do want to discuss one more thing, two more things. First off, John, I don't know if you heard, this is a great video. I've moved on, by the way. So this is baseball. Listen to this. I think we're in week 8 or week 9 of the "Fuck You, Joe Biden." So this again laced with bad words. So be prepared.
Joe Biden. How was that racist at all? Are you like this kidding? Who gives a fuck? Fuck Joe Biden. He fucking sucks. No, we're all racist. We're all racist. We're racist. We're racist.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard it. Oops, sorry about that.
Joe Biden.
So the woman complained that they were being racist by calling Joe Biden, by saying "fuck you, Joe Biden." So I analyzed this, John. I got out my paper and my pen. I sharpened it. I got everything, laid it all out in front of me, and I sat there and I thought about it. And I'm thinking, well, she might be on to something. She really might be, bro. I want you to think about this, because Joe Biden really is not in control of the White House. He is not. And really, the person in charge of the White House is Valerie Jarrett, who happens to be an operative of Barack Obama. So maybe through proxy, there is some type of racism. But I think it's much more evident that this woman is completely an idiot, because I mean, Joe Biden makes me look, dark. I mean, he's so white. He's white. He's got those hairy legs too. Let's not forget that. And
blonde hairy legs, right? The kids just love to put their hands all over her.
So it boggles my mind that she thinks that we're being racist when people are saying this. And of course, these guys just love it. I have to listen to it again. So please deal with it.
How was that racist at all? How was that racist at all? Are you like this kidding? Who gives a fuck? Fuck Joe Biden. He fucking sucks.
Who gives a fuck? It's Joe Biden.
We're racist. We're racist.
Now, John, I don't know which Major League Baseball that was, but I suspect it was Yankee Stadium. I suspect it was Yankee Stadium. I can't really tell. I'm not familiar with baseball stadiums enough to be able to say, but there are a lot of Yankees shirts in the video. So I'm guessing it's got to do with the Yankees wherever they were playing, yesterday, or maybe New If indeed it is New York City, and people are saying "fuck you, Joe Biden" at a Yankees game, I wonder if those numbers of Joe Biden's are even lower than they're saying. that they, you know, are really in the tank much more. And so I want to talk about, we were restricted recently. The last show that we had a number of at the end of our beginning, the old beginning had a scene from Braveheart where he talks about going off to war and, you know, fighting for your freedom. And so apparently Facebook, after, I don't know, I've probably shown that for about 4 months now, John. We've had that same video for 4 months or more, and they've just caught on to it that it's the background has the audio from that scene. And so they flagged it as not being able to be played in 119 countries, separate countries around the world. And here, John, are some of those countries. And I just want to make it clear that I'm very upset about these 119 countries not being able to see it. I do think we should file a lawsuit against them, which will require us probably to go to that area and file. So I just want to put on a list. Barbados is on that list. You know, Bermuda
You're gonna
is
pull
on
up the
that.
credit card. You're fine. Gonna pull up the credit card.
You know, the Antilles is on there. You know, okay,
Road
Antarctica. Antarctica is on there as well, but we are not flying all the way down to Antarctica in the middle of winter, which I guess it's summer down there now, right? The Ivory Coast. I mean, John, some of these countries, you know, the Falkland Islands, Cuba,
What? Right?
China,
Cuba. Let's go to Cuba.
China, John,
China. I'm not going to China.
China, Djibouti.
Djibouti to you too.
Yeah.
You're Djibouti.
Jamaica's on the list.
That's it. That's
all
what we have to go to.
Are being denied.
We're going to Jamaica, and we're going to show them. We'll follow it down there.
Yeah, they've been denied the brilliance of that opening video. I feel very upset. I feel like we should do something about this. You know, this is something we got to stand up for all the people in these countries, these 119 countries. I mean, seriously, John, we have to do something about this. So, having said that, I now pass the baton back over to you. It's all yours.
For another Pugnando Pro Dio, but short. I'll do the short version of it today. And this is for, again, well, one way to look at it is the great Chesterton. Used to be everybody who's intellectual in any way, form would read G.K. Chesterton, the great British English writer who kind of updated Catholicism. He makes a point, you know, the words of Jesus, you know, Jesus either either was who he said he was, God, or he was a madman. The problem with considering him as a madman is that things he said were the most rational things ever said by a human being. So it's always been his challenge. And one of the ways that we do this is we do Pugnando Pro Dio, fighting for God. Now, we refuse to do apologetics because the only apology we do is on our knees at night, apologizing to God for all the misdeeds that we've done today. That's just our way. For example, you know, calling AOC donkey face, but that's the only apologetic that we're doing.
John.
And
Cinderella.
we're doing right. And we're so the only apologetics we do is that we're doing great violence to this age-old 1900 year tradition of defense of God, because we're not doing that. We're doing Pugnando Pro Dio, fighting for God. And so the idea is we're doing a scientific historian version. If we can prove that, if we can link the dots between what Jesus said and what society we have today, we can then use Brandeis's idea of the laboratory of the states to expand it to a laboratory of society of cultures, and because this is the only culture that has it, then we can connect the dots and show that he was God and he was not man, because no man could say these things and if we or think these things, and it had to be from God. So anyway, today's Luke 10:25, the famous parable about the Good Samaritan. Now we think of the Good Samaritan because of Good Samaritan laws. If you see somebody having a heart attack and you help and you're protected by it, but that's not actually what the Good Samaritan was. Today, to us, today Samaritan is like a good word. It's not a degenerative word, which is what it was back then. So a lawyer stood up and wants to be full of himself and says to Jesus, "Teacher, how do I achieve eternal life?" And Jesus says to him, what does the scripture say? And he says, well, I have to follow God's law and love thy neighbor. And he says, he says, this is right. But because this guy's all full of himself, this lawyer's all full of himself, he thinks he gets Jesus and goes, well, who's my neighbor? So Jesus tells him the parable about the Good Samaritan. Now I'm going to update it for today's audience. But so basically, a man is on the road from Jerusalem, Jericho, or to Washington, D.C. And while he's going to Washington, D.C., he's beset about a bunch of robbers. Robbers like Bernie Sanders, beat him up. Antifa and Bernie Sanders boys beat him up, and they steal all his money. And so along comes a priest. Back then, it was a temple priest. And today, of course, it would be AOC or the priests of the Green Movement, Thunberg or whatever, and they would go and do a few kicks. And now Nancy Pelosi, of course, will go through his pockets for more money instead of going across the other side. But anyway, along comes a Samaritan. Now, today that would be, say, a January 6th. A demonstrator, with his Magna cap on, and he sees this poor person who's been robbed, and he puts oil and water on them, and he takes them to the inn, and he gives them to the innkeeper 2 denarii. He says, "Look, I'm going to be back in a week. Take care of him. If there's any bill, I'll pay his bill." And that was the Good Samaritan. What was the shocking thing in Jesus' day in telling this story, though, was that the Samaritans were the Jews of their day, in that they were the people most discriminated by the Jews. They were the enemy of the Jews. They were ethnically, what they were having, the Samaritans are from the northern kingdom of Judea, and when the Assyrians came in, they wiped them out. They resettled it with a lot of foreign Assyrians and people from their empire, and so the Jews actually looked at the Samaritans as degraded, degenerate, not ethnically pure Jews. Who would think that just like the Germans looked at the Jews as impure, the Jews would actually look at a people, the Samaritans, in the same way? Just going to show you that we're all evil. We all have this fallen nature of mankind. And we all need to be redeemed by Jesus Christ. Well, anyway, so the Samaritans were the Jews of their day, and that's why the story was so shocking. And this jerk lawyer wouldn't. Now, so then at the end of the parable, Jesus says to him, so which of those 3 were treated him as the neighbor to the robber? And then the lawyer can't even bring himself to say, well, the Good Samaritan. He won't even say that, because to him, he can't conceive of that idea. He says the 3rd one, right? Proving again that he's a lawyer, and all lawyers are jerks. But anyway, how does that translate today? Well, today we're faced with cultural Marxism, and Marxism itself economically there was no such thing as economics of Marxism. It's a fraud, right? But what we have today is the cultural Marxism, is the attempt to re-tribalize us. Through 2,000 years of listening to Jesus Christ's story about the Good Samaritan, you've broken down the idea of tribes. And what you have today, what we're faced with, is cultural Marxism, is the reintegration of tribes. You have the tribe of the transgenderism. You have the tribe of the feminism. You have the feminists, the feminazis. You have the tribe, of the Green New Deal idiots. You have the religion. You have all these tribes. The idea is to break us back down to tribes, because then the evil Democrats can then use that division to exploit it for power, to steal money for themselves, which has always been their goal. So what we're faced. So what you had with with Jesus's story is the beginning of man. Jesus place into the name of Catholic Church, right? We're Catholic. Our great mother, Ballistic Patriot's birthday is number 2. It's going to be in a few days. She had said to her when I asked her, why are you still Catholic? This is during the days of the scandal. He said, I'll tell you why. Because the Catholic Church is the only place where you have a place whether you're just going to be worshiping like Filomena Baldini, which is an illegal Italian peasant, or you can have the high end of religious investigation and knock your head against St. Thomas Aquinas and Augustine, like our mother did. And it had a place for everybody because the name Catholic is actually universal. It means universal church. And so that transcendental idea of a transcendental mankind is Jesus's creation. What is America today? America is nothing more than the political realization of those words. It's the evolution of the religious idea of transcendental mind to the political realm. And of course, as the great Dennis Prager points out, that he calls it the American Trinity, of liberty, in God we trust, and ultimately e pluribus unum, which we see in all of our money, which is a true historian, Forrest McDonald, wrote one of the great books in history on it. E pluribus unum, from many, one. We don't need a United Nations. We are the United Nations already. The United States of America is the UN of the world already. And without the words of Jesus Christ, you can never have the transcendental mankind of religious nature evolve into transcendental mankind of political nature to create e pluribus unum, the American founding and the great nation of America. Proving once again the scientific historical proof of the words of Jesus Christ are not from man. They are beyond man's ability to say that or to think that. You have to say he was the super genius of all time to come up with that one concept, which he then said, let alone everything else he said that we're showing throughout Pugnando pro Dio. So at the end of it, he tells the lawyer who won't say it, who is the neighbor, and then he says the third one. Well, he says go and do likewise, meaning go take care. Not only was his words, that was his action. Go and break down the ethnic tribalism and take care of your neighbors. Be the Good Samaritan. And today he's been so successful. To us, the words Good Samaritan, we have none of the historical context of it, and we think of it in the positive light, not in the original tones of the was. So it would be today, go be that good January 6th Magna pro Trumper who would pick up the poor Antifa goon and tend to his wounds, because he is, of course, a follower of Jesus Christ and not that creep Marx. And that would be our Pugnanda pro Dio part 6 for today.
Brother, I forgot to tell us, we have Jen Psaki telling us why the numbers are so bad. I forgot this in the update. So just before we go, I just want to share this with everybody. What the answer that she has.
Very tough approval ratings these days. I know you probably don't like to talk about polls, and you might say that they don't mean anything, but it's also fair to say the White House, when there are good polls, you publicize them. So what do you make of these really terrible polls? Are they that he's doing something wrong? Is it just the communication, or is it he's doing the popular things that have to be done? Or something else?
Sure. Well, look, I would say that this is a really tough time in our country. We're still battling COVID. And a lot of people thought we'd be through it, including us. And because of the rise of the Delta variant, because of the fact that even though it was a vaccine that was approved under a Republican administration, even though we now have full FDA approval, and even though it's widely available across the country, we still have a quarter of the country who have, less than that, 20% of the country who've decided not to get vaccinated. No question that's having an impact. And of course, as the president has said, the buck stops with him.
Yeah, the buck stops with him, except for when he blames or she blames the unvaccinated as the reason why there's still a number of people who are getting sick. Let's not talk about the rest of the world, which hasn't been vaccinated or what have you. It still comes down to these illegal mandates, these illegal mask wearing. All of it comes down to passing the buck. There's 300,000 Americans who have died since since Biden took office. So I think now we can say that they are, since he specifically said that it was Trump's fault, every American death was Trump's fault. Now we can say specifically everything is Biden's fault for that. On that note, brother, do you have? Oh, by the way, everyone, like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you get the word out. This is, again, how we fight back. This is how we take back our country. You can get we're giving you the tools, we're giving you the know-how, we're giving you the skill set in order to use with your neighbors, your friends, to help convince them of the political arguments that you need to win back our country. Here in New Jersey, we have an election that's coming up in November. You want to vote Chitterelli. You want to get out with your friends and neighbors that are voting against CRT in the local school board elections. You want to get out there and talk to your neighbors that are running for town council and mayor, and question them on lowering the budgets and getting the bills paid for your towns, and pushing back against the state mandates, because those towns they have the ability to push back and demand action from our legislature, which is another one. You need to reach out to your state legislatures and your state, in the Senate, the House, Assembly, whatever it may be that you have as your legislature. You need to reach out to them, find out what they're doing, what their plans are, what they stand for, and whether you should vote for them or not. These are all questions that you should find out. Virginia is an extremely tight race right now in the governors, and the race is tightening in New Jersey. So get your friends, get your neighbors, go to the polls together, vote together, and make sure you check to make sure your vote counted. Any last parting thoughts, brother?
Yeah, one more. You ready?
It's all
good, my babies.
It's all good.
I said it. No, so you have to say the other one.
Because God loves you.
There you go. It's all good, my babies.
Because God loves you. Take care. We'll see you next week. Don't forget, Wednesday is Cycle of Mayhem in plain sight with AJ Hayes and myself.
Cool. I'm going to bust in on that show one of these
8
days.
o'clock. You're welcome to come in, brother. I'm sure he won't mind. All right, ladies and gentlemen, take care.
The world will know that free men stood against a tyrant, that few stood against many.
Knucklehead idiot Fauci was on TV today. I think he was always on TV. Today he was saying some kind of nonsense that if you're not wearing a mask, you're violating other people's civil rights. It's the exact opposite, but what you expect from a totalitarian.
What we have today in China, the authoritarian monstrosity that is trying to take over the world, that wholeheartedly believes that every kernel of dirt on the planet Earth and underneath, and every human being living on the surface and beneath the surface of the Earth is Chinese property, including, John, the moon, the Mars, and all the skies are all Chinese property. That's what these authoritarians think, and that's what their goal is, to take it all over.